Welcome to Machine Minds, where technology and humanity meet. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, a recruiting and search business focused on the robotics and AI industries. The Machine Minds show is where we dive deep into the intricate world of robotics and artificial intelligence. As a staffing industry leader with a passion for the frontiers of technology, I'm pleased to be bringing you intimate conversations with the founders, investors, and trailblazers who are at the heart of the AI and robotics revolution. In each episode, we dig into their journeys, the applications of the products they're working on, and the breakthroughs that are shaping our future. Join us as we explore how these machine minds are transforming the way we live, work, and understand our world. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a tech enthusiast, or just curious about this amazing field, you'll learn something new with each episode. Let's delve into the extraordinary. Let's delve into machine minds. Hello and welcome to Machine Minds. I'm your host, Greg Terrusian, founder of Samson Rose, your robotics talent search partner. And on today's episode, I'm joined by Dale Walsh, VP of Strategy and Innovation at Roboworx. Thanks for being on the show today, Dale.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our chat today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Let's jump into it. You know what? Actually, before we dive in, let's try something a little bit different. Can you tell us something surprising about yourself that most people wouldn't expect?
Sure. Probably one of the most is that I'm a full-time RVer. So no longer have
Yeah,
a true home base, what we call sticks and bricks. We live in a 35-foot fifth wheel and travel the country full time. So be coming to you right now
amazing.
from Lake Gunnersville, Alabama. So yeah, travel full time in an RV.
That is how long have you been doing that for?
Part-time, like 2-month trips at a time for half the year for about 5, 6 years. Full-time for almost 2 years now.
Amazing. And for anyone watching this on video, it looks beautiful. It looks like a front room. So you won't even be able to tell it. That's great. Well, thanks for telling us about that. I've been wanting to do an RV trip myself for ages. So maybe I'll have to pick your brain on that offline and get some
Absolutely.
advice.
It's a unique
So
lifestyle, that's for
jump.
sure.
Yeah, I bet. And it sounds like a lot of freedom just to
Yes,
explore. So that's really cool.
absolutely.
So let's talk about you and your career background a little bit more. You had this fascinating career journey leading up to your current role at Roboworx. What initially drew you into the field of robotics and innovation?
Sure. That's a great question. So before I came to Roboworx, I was with Ricoh for 28 years. And most of my career was spent in managed services, on-site managed services, where we ran all kinds of different facilities management jobs for different companies. Things like running their mail centers, loading dock, shipping, receiving, print centers, those type of functions. And my role, most of my career there started in operations, but moved over into an analyst role fairly early on. And so most of my career on that side of the house was built automating manual tasks. How do we do things that are done by humans? How do we automate those, make them quicker, faster, more accurate, more efficient? So I was always out looking for new technologies to be able to automate manual tasks. And so ultimately, that led to becoming a founding member of what was called the Service Advantage program at Ricoh, which is where they use Ricoh technicians to do third-party service. So I was a founding member of that program, and then I started the robotics practice within that program um, to 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 saw the need for somebody to help install, maintain, repair robots, and we were able to use the Ricoh field technicians to do that work. So I've been supporting robots for probably close to 10 years now, and came over to Roboworx about 4 years ago. At the time, it was for the parent company, which is ARO, which did many of the similar type facility services that Ricoh did as well. But they were looking
Okay.
to start a robotics practice here. They had kind of seen the writing on the wall that these type of manual tasks were eventually going to be automated by robotics. It was the handwriting was on the wall, so to speak. And so they were very interested in getting into the robotics space. And so when we first talked, had very similar interests, similar backgrounds, similar direction we were wanting to go. So I came over, like I said, about 4 years ago, and then helped get what is now Roboworks started. So we've been supporting robots now for about 3 years, and we changed the name to Roboworx for this division in January of this year. So Roboworx as a brand is just about a year old, but we've been on the support side now for robots for about 3 years. And all we do is
Very
robots.
cool.
We don't do anything else. We don't do printers or copiers or ATMs or other equipment. We focus entirely on supporting robots.
Nice. That's great. Thank you for the background. And
Sure.
you've held multiple leadership roles across different industries or in your career in general. What do you think one key lesson you've learned throughout your career or even in your earlier career that you bring into this current role at Roboworx?
I would say it's a desire for innovation, um, for and for automation, innovation and automation. Um, that was always my focus. My whole career has been around, as mentioned earlier, around automating the manual task with whatever tool that might be. In this case, it happens to be robots now, but obviously there's a lot of other automation technologies. So yeah, I would say that it's just that desire to automate has always been a part of what I've done.
And it must have been quite a big change for you going from such a long tenure with one company and seeing that change so much at Ricoh, and then going into ARO and then obviously now Roboworx. What kind of sealed the deal for you that this is the direction that you're going to go after almost 3 decades with one company?
Absolutely, and it was a big change, but it was a welcome change, quite honestly. As someone who just innovates by nature, right? Um, Working inside, being an innovative person inside a big corporate bureaucracy is extremely frustrating, right? Because you can lay out the best plan, but if the bureaucracy doesn't buy off, it just nothing happens, right? So you spend a lot of your
Yeah.
time fighting internal battles um, on things that are just very obvious. So moving over to a smaller company that was far more agile and flexible and innovative as well was a welcome change.
Nice. You gave us a bit of insight there about the founding story, like how the idea or need came about for Roboworx and obviously the rebrand there. Every company, even if it's a startup within a larger company or a new division, nothing's ever smooth, right? Like there's always obstacles to face and things like that.
Yep.
You've been there from it sounds like from the outset. What were some of the biggest challenges that you guys faced in the early stages, and how have you overcome those?
Sure. Yeah. It's you're right. There are absolutely challenges, and we kind of with my background at Ricoh, and then coming to ARO now Roboworx, we came at it from completely different directions, right? So Ricoh had thousands and thousands of technicians out in the field, and the Service Advantage program was created to essentially fill in the time of those technicians, right? As copiers and printers became more reliable, the technicians had free time on their hands, and so we're trying to fill in their time with doing other things, including robots, along with other technologies. At Roboworx, we took it from the complete we started with a blank sheet of paper. Right. Fortunately, we were part of a parent company, so we had a parachute, I guess you could say, or an umbrella to work under. But we started with a blank sheet of paper, and we're able to build based on what we saw the customer needs versus trying to fit the infrastructure that we already had, to fit a customer need. So the challenge that comes with that is, we didn't have thousands of technicians in the field. We had to be very specialized in what we do. We had to be very focused in supporting robotics. And then we had to build our technical workforce to address the needs of our customers. So, when you have a big name behind you, first of all, and you got a big workforce, it's a lot easier to get customers to say, yes, I'll do business with you. When you're a startup,
Yeah.
it's a lot more challenging. But we also helped us relate to many of the robotics companies that we work with who are also startups, right? Um, so we really sympathize with them and feel their pain, and have a passion for helping those startup companies. So, yeah, when you're small, your startup, getting those first few customers to trust you, because you can't say, well, we've done it here, 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 and here. You've got to be able to
Yeah.
prove to them, that you can, and gain their trust, and then most importantly, deliver on what you promise.
Yeah, that's very true. Very true. It's always like the first hurdle to overcome, and then trying to get creative with your service offering or pricing or whatever it is to just get the door open, really.
Right.
Um, let's talk more about the service that you guys offer and the technology itself. Can you share like what specific challenges in the industry you guys are trying to address with your solution?
Absolutely. So essentially, we install, we maintain, do preventative maintenance, uh, and repair robots for various robot manufacturers in a variety of industries. So we work with some very small startups. We work with some companies that are even pre-revenue, that are just coming out of their stealth phase. Um, on up to some very, very large, companies that you would certainly know the names, and kind of everything in between. But the challenge that most of them have, it varies depending on the partner, but operational challenges, right? The U.S. is a big geography. It's a lot of ground to cover. So we also work with companies that are coming into the U.S. From outside, maybe from China or Japan or India, coming into the U.S. market. And it can be very, daunting to come to the U.S. Although it's a great opportunity, it's also a very big geography to cover, and you never know where your robots are going to go, right? You can't say, okay, we're just going to sell robots in Dallas, or we're just going to sell robots in New York. Yeah, it really, really doesn't work that way, right? So where do you put, if you're going to try to do it yourself, where do you put your technicians? Do you just fly people all over the country, which, obviously that's not very scalable. Um, so we're able to either become their operations arm in totality, which we do for some of our partners, especially some of our smaller partners. We essentially are their operations department. So everything to do with deploying, maintaining, repairing the robots, we handle that for them. In other cases, maybe it's a large robotic company, we may step in and just do supplement certain pieces of it. Maybe they want to focus their technicians on installations, deployments of new robots, and want us to handle
Yeah.
the preventative maintenance on the robots, or the preventative maintenance and the repair of the robots. So we're very, again, being a small company, we're very nimble, very flexible, very bespoke. So our solutions are unique to our customers' needs. We're not trying to fit them into a certain program. So we work with, in a lot of different ways with different customers. So we don't have a preset menu of, here's what here's our service offerings. We work collaboratively with our partners to really find what their challenges are and then solve those around supporting their robots.
Nice. Without diving too deep into any proprietary details or customers, I know we spoke offline, tons of NDAs here, so we can't share, but can you walk us through how your core technology works or even your business offering, what makes you guys unique?
Sure. I think the thing that makes us most unique, and I hate to keep referring it back to Ricoh or other people in the field, competitors in the space, but what does make us different is we're not trying to maximize that technician's time. We're not trying to take his schedule and make sure every day is filled up with with service calls. Right? So we can
Yeah.
spend more time with our customers, our customers' customers, really, the people who are utilizing the robots. We're not trying to, get him in, get a technician in, do a preventative maintenance or do a repair, and then get out and move to the next thing. So what that allows us to do is to really focus on what we call customer success, which is, obviously making sure the robot is working correctly. That's kind of table stakes. Nothing's going to be successful if the robot doesn't work. So we got to make sure that it's electromechanically, that the robot is working correctly. But then it's about digging deeper into the actual applications of the robot and the problems that the robot is there to solve. Obviously, these robots today are going into high turnover environments, whether that's a restaurant, a hotel, a casino, an airport, a warehouse, a distribution center, some type of manufacturing operation. They're all high turnover environments. That's mostly why they're bringing in robots, is because they can't hire enough people to do the jobs. And we can get into the whole concept of are robots taking people's jobs or that kind of thing. But in general, I think robots are filling jobs that these companies can't hire for. So there's a lot of turnover, and these robot companies are dependent on the adoption and proper use of their technology by what are essentially entry-level employees. If you make a floor cleaning robot, you've got to make sure that the janitors are properly using it. If you make a robot to be used at front of house in a restaurant, you've got to make sure the wait staff is properly using that robot. So we can really spend time watching the operation of observing the operation of the robots, how the staff is using the robots, and we dig in deep into what not the company, but the end users. What do they like or dislike about the robots? And they're usually pretty happy to tell
Yeah.
you what they either like or don't like about the robots. They're not going to pick up the phone and call the manufacturer and say, "Hey, I don't like this about your robot," right? I mean, they're not empowered to do that or don't feel empowered to do that. But when somebody's there working on the robot, they'll talk to them. They'll tell them what's working or not working. So it gives us the opportunity to be very proactive and make sure that the end customer is truly getting the value that they expected out of that purchase of robot technology. The other thing too is we're constantly adapting, adjusting. Like a restaurant's a great example. If it's supposed to go to say you have 10 tables in the restaurant, and then the robot's supposed to go from the kitchen to each of these 10 tables on the map. But those tables get moved around. Sometimes, they're pulling them together, they're separating them, they take all the tables out to clean the floor, then bring the tables back in. So, before long, it doesn't go to table 10 correctly anymore. So we just don't send it to table 10. And they move them all around again. And now it doesn't go to table 10, doesn't go to table 3 correctly anymore. So we don't send it to those tables. We just do those manually. Next thing you know, the robot's sitting over in the corner and they've gone back to doing it their old way. Because you got to get the food out. A lot of times they don't have time to mess with the technology. They've got to get their customers taken care of. So by us constantly making those fine tuning and adjustments on a very regular basis, we're able to help prevent those issues from becoming problems.
It's great and refreshing as well. I think everyone can relate to having I don't want to say bad experiences, but like minimal experiences or like surface level technician visits or whatever, whether it's your AC unit, your refrigerator, whatever it is at home, someone coming to sort out your Wi-Fi, and they're just back to back. So if you're later in the afternoon, you know that is going to be a very late, no one's coming on time.
In depth.
Which makes me, yeah, I hope I don't know if you can answer this question, but how do you figure out like your pricing or business model then? Like, are you incentivized by the amount of time that your customer is actually using the robot, or is it just like when you mention customer success, is it a lot focused just purely on customer success and that's how you guys make money, or what's your model for that?
Sure, great question. It really depends on a few factors, right? The time that we're gonna spend on site, and the frequency that we're going to be there. So in most cases, most of our robotic partners, and we have the customer success piece. We also have the electromechanical preventative maintenance piece as well. And that's specified by the manufacturer. These are the things that need to be done on whatever the frequency is, quarterly, semi-annually, monthly, whatever that might be. So we have those things. So we need to validate how long does it actually take to do those. And then we factor in that additional time, the time for retraining, the time for observing the operation, the time for making those adjustments and tweaks that we talked about earlier. So we know how much time we're going to spend on site. So then the next one is, how often do we need to be there? And every technology is different. We have some technology. I would say the majority of our robotic technology that we support today, primarily AMRs in that space, are quarterly. We'll go once a quarter on site to do the preventative maintenance, to do the retraining. We have some that are more frequent than that. We have, especially on the food service side, we have some that are monthly preventative maintenance, and then we have some that are every 6 months, and we even have one that's annual. So how long are we going to be on site? How frequently do we need to be on site? Those are really the things, and then how often do we expect it to break? That's the one that's a little bit of the crystal ball comes out to be able to figure out, how often does something actually break that we need to go on site to do repairs. I will say though,
I guess
that by doing regular preventative maintenance, we've been able to dramatically reduce the amount of on-demand break fix calls by doing those regular PMs. In fact, we have one customer that we can document a 93% reduction in break fix
wow,
calls by doing regular PMs. They didn't have a PM program before we started. Their customers were unhappy with the service. We implemented a preventative maintenance program, and we're able to reduce their calls by 93%.
that's awesome, and again refreshing, right? But I think everyone can understand why that's important when you look at the big picture. And if you've got multiple robots deployed, and especially in an environment where you don't have the most tech savvy or even like technical ability people to manage it,
Right.
this makes sense. And I think if anyone's going to know what's best, like preventative or the schedule or whatever, you would. If you're spending time with your customer, if you're spending time on site, you're going to know, like you mentioned in the food space, if tables are moving around, hey, we got to reprogram these robots every month or every 2 months because of these changes. Or if you've got these running like pretty much 24/7, probably going to break down a lot sooner than someone else. So you would be able to factor that in. That's great. That's great.
Absolutely.
High
Yeah.
touch.
And even environmental factors. In the warehouse space, we have one customer where um, the robots are moving a tremendous amount of apparel around. And that creates cotton dust. And so that dust gets onto sensors, it gets into the drivetrain. It kind of permeates everything, right? So that's kind of a unique environmental factor that drives additional preventative maintenance as well.
Interesting. Yeah, very good point. Let's shift gears and talk more about the innovation and team and stuff like that. In your role as VP of Strategy and Innovation, how do you kind of lead and try to foster a culture of innovation at the company? Is there like a specific approach that keeps the company ahead of the curve, or being proactive with like the things that you shared here, knowing what to offer and how to offer it and use the data you have?
Yeah, I think, the old phrase about keeping your ear close to the ground really applies here. And there's a couple ways that we do that. One of them is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a fantastic tool for networking and understanding what's happening in the industry that you're supporting. So that's been a very effective tool for us. The other piece is shows, conferences, both horizontal, robotics uh, shows, but also various verticals that are utilizing robotics. So, we'll go and spend time at shows like, let's say, Automate, that's all about robotics. But then we'll also be going to shows that are specific to the material handling, like Modex and ProMat, and shows that are specific to healthcare or specific to other verticals that are beginning to adopt robotics. So I think it's important to hear from both of those sides, both the manufacturers, but also the end customers. So we spend a lot of time at shows. This week I was at the A3 humanoid, the inaugural humanoid robotics forum, as well as the AMR forum that's been held every year for the last several years. Networking, listening to both manufacturers of robotics, but also customers of those robotics companies to hear how robots are solving their problems, but also what challenges that they have as well. And then looking at how do we help meet those challenges for those end customers. So yeah, I would say networking, social media, in particular LinkedIn, and then those in-person conferences are the way that we really stay connected to both the manufacturers and to the customers that are utilizing the robots.
Love that. And is that something that you kind of push throughout the business to make it part of your culture and, like you say, keep your ear to the ground and hear what people need?
It is. It's in my role. I will certainly attend a lot of these conferences myself, especially those that are more cutting edge, I guess you could say. So things like the commercial drone space, the humanoid robotic space, uh, less a degree to the AMR space today, and then more of our core team will be attending those more, I guess you could say, mainstream shows as well that are less cutting edge, but more traditional use, certainly AMRs. Like an Automate, for example, we'll have multiple people attending those, from operations, from business development, um, and then myself as well. So yes, as it becomes, I'll handle a lot of the cutting edge early stuff, and then as we have more mainstream, we'll bring more of our teams into that as well.
Amazing. Okay. Let's talk about team, because building a strong team is obviously important and something crucial, especially in the
Absolutely.
space that you guys operate in. What qualities do you look for, do you think are most important when hiring people at Roboworx?
Yeah. So from our technician standpoint, the answer might surprise you. The thing that we look for most in people are customer service skills. Um, a- and you can't really train for that. People either have it or they
Yeah.
don't have it, right? So that's really the first thing we look for are really good customer service skills. Second to that is then an aptitude for this type of electromechanical work. So we don't necessarily always have to have people who have robot experience. If you have robot experience, that's great. And we certainly hire folks who do, but we can also train. We're very good at training people. If you have the aptitude and the skill sets to be able to work in this robotic space, we can train you on the specific technology. Um, so we look for the aptitude. And then if you have experience, that's really kind of the third level is that experience with robotics. So, but first and foremost is customer service skills because we can't train that. Like I said, you either have it or you don't. And that's so critical, especially for our customer success program, is to make sure that those folks have good customer service skills. Doesn't matter how great of a technician they are, if they come in and they irritate the end customer or don't give a good impression of our end customer because we're representing the robotics company, right? So we're not representing
Yeah.
Roboworx to these people. We're representing whatever the robotics partner is. So if you don't make a good impression, it doesn't matter how good you were with fixing the robot, the customer's really not going to be happy. So first and foremost, customer service skills.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that speaks to how customer centric you are and how high of a standard you hold. The customer success element of what you do is super important. Thank you for
Absolutely.
sharing that. Yeah, and I think it's refreshing.
Yeah.
Again,
And I'll
like
just
if you're a service business like that, you need to be.
absolutely. And I'll just add too that, it's different around the world. Um, if you're deploying robots in China or South Korea or Japan, there's an almost natural adoption of robot technology. That's not the case here in the US, right? There's still in some cases, I'll say a fear of robotics, um, on up to, just being ambivalent about it. There are some that are also, very accepting of it. But especially when we work with companies that are coming in from Asia into the U.S. market, it's sometimes very surprising to them how much hand holding actually needs to be done for that customer adoption and utilization of the robots. You can't just drop, even if the robot works perfectly, you can't just drop it in and walk away and expect it to be successful. Um, it just doesn't work that way in the U.S. market. There's a lot of hand holding that still needs to be done. Eventually, I think we'll probably get there, but we're not there today. Today, need a lot of hand holding.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Okay. You mentioned earlier, and I want to go back to that about jobs being displaced by robots and things like that. What's your perspective on the societal impact of automation, and how can companies like you guys ensure, being part of a positive change? I
Sure,
think it's positive, just
absolutely.
for the record, in general, but I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I tend to take the long view on this. And as a matter of fact, I'll go all the way back to the mid 1400s when Gutenberg commercialized the printing press. The Chinese
Mhm.
invented it about around 1000 AD. But in the mid 1400s is when Gutenberg really commercialized the first printing press and literally changed the world, right? And we've been automating things ever since. That was kind of the first real automation technology, um, and literally changed the world because it took um, knowledge that was held by just a handful of people, the most elites of the world, and made that knowledge available to everyone, essentially. And like I said, we've been automating things ever since then. There are a tremendous amount of technologies that we have implemented and adopted over the years. Everything, from moving from horse and buggy to automobiles, right? We don't have coach makers anymore. They became automakers. No, we don't, except for like specialty hobbies and things. We don't make coach whips anymore, right? We don't have phone operators anymore. We do a lot of self-service technologies, and we've adapted to those things. Our culture, our society has adapted to those changes, uh, technology advancements, um, and we always have, and we always will. This is just the latest iteration of it. I think it's kind of ironic when people are, let's say, complaining about robots taking jobs. They're probably doing it either from a computer or from a smartphone connected to the internet. All three of those technologies have eliminated far more jobs than robotics ever have. But those are the tools that are being used to complain about robotics taking people's jobs. So, and as someone who's had their position eliminated on an individual basis, absolutely sympathize and know the pain and trauma that brings. But on a societal level, we adapt, we change. We use airplanes today that we didn't have before. We use automobiles today that we didn't have at one time. Like I said, the smartphone changed a tremendous amount of things. The internet has changed a tremendous amount of things. So we'll continue to see these. I think there's obviously a lot more attention to it today, a lot more media attention, social media. Um, you know, so things like robotics that fall into the social media era get a lot more attention today. But we'll adapt. We'll change, to these new technologies, and we'll continue to do so as a society, I think.
Do you think that there's any limitations in the regulatory landscape, whether that helps or hinders innovation in robotics?
I mean, certainly,
Or if
when
any,
we talk about robotics, we also consider commercial drones as part of robotics,
yeah,
and certainly regulatory issues there. Um, Obviously, there has to be a focus on safety, whether that's handled by the industry itself or regulated by the government. In general, safety is self-regulated in the robotics industry. It's regulated by the government in the commercial drone space, obviously. Um, but we're seeing more and more of those um, restrictions being released as the technology gets more reliable, as regulators get more comfortable with the technologies. Yes, it does slow things down, but probably rightfully so, from a safety standpoint, because obviously safety has to be the most important thing. You can't
yeah,
the first rule of robotics is to do no harm, right? So we got to make sure the robots are safe.
okay, love that. Let's look at the broader industry. Are there any trends or upcoming technologies that you're particularly excited about?
Certainly, as I mentioned earlier, the humanoid robotics, I think there's going to be tremendous amounts of opportunity in that space.
Mhm.
AMRs have grown exponentially over the last 10 years or so as they've been introduced, and I think will continue to grow. But the value of a humanoid robot, I mean, let's face it, everything in our world today is built for humans to operate in, because there's stairs, um, there's doors, there's all kinds of things that and for a human it's no problem, just turn a doorknob and open a door and go through. For an AMR, that's not so easy, right? We've got to build in sensors, and we've got to build in actuators and all kinds of things to be able to make it just so that AMR can go through a door. So I think and then the collision of AI and humanoid is kind of the perfect storm there, of that form factor that can go anywhere that a human can go, essentially, combined with the AI functionality that we're seeing today. It's kind of the perfect storm to really grow that space. So very excited to see where that goes over the next 5-10 years. I think we're going to see a lot of humanoid robots, in very public places, in the near future. So excited about that. Excited about the potential for commercial drone technology as well. I think there's a lot of value, whether it's delivering medication or or samples, or different things in the medical space, that can help save lives. I think is really very interesting. And then also, on a more something that affects us more is seeing more emphasis on design for serviceability inside of robots.
Mm.
Um, so many robots in the past have been designed for whatever function they're trying to achieve without really thinking about the serviceability of the robots. A common one
Interesting.
is with AMRs and others, placing the battery as low as possible inside the robot for to lower the center of gravity. But that's also one of the most common components that needs to be replaced, and you have to essentially take the entire robot apart just to change the battery. So seeing more of a design for serviceability is, I think, great for us as well.
Yeah, interesting. What's next for Roboworx? Are there any upcoming projects or innovations that you're particularly excited about, or new areas of the market that you're moving into?
I think beyond what we've discussed already, maybe the humanoid robot piece, I think, is going to be an exciting
Yeah.
one to go. Same thing for commercial drone space. Those for us, the two of the areas that we're seeing some of the fastest growth today is in food service automation, primarily back of house. We do robots at front of
Okay.
house too for food delivery, but we're seeing a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity in the back of house robots that are actually preparing the food. We have one partner as a great example. One of the names I can talk about publicly, because we've done press releases around it, joint press releases, is a company called Picnic, that
Mm.
builds a robot that assembles pizzas, high volume pizza making robot. Um, 150 pizzas an hour kind of thing, whether that's to be manufactured to then be frozen and then sold at retail, or manufactured to be for high volume environments like college campuses are a great example of where they're using this technology. College kids eat lots of pizza, so having production equipment like that, to be able to keep up with that demand. So, those are exciting technologies, that are automating, things that we consume on a daily basis.
Great. What challenges do you think that the industry as a whole might be facing in the next sort of 5 to 10 years, and how does Roboworx help address those or mitigate
Yeah,
those?
I think the adoption piece there is. We talked a little bit before about, um, you know, are robots here to take my job kind of thing. I think we've seen that
Yeah.
very publicly here recently with the longshoreman strike and the desire to keep automation out of that industry. So I think that's still an uphill battle, adoption of the technology. Um, when people get a chance to interact directly with robotics, I think they generally find that it is helpful to them. I mean, let's go back to the restaurant for a moment. If I'm a, a server in a restaurant, the robot can be a tremendous assistant to me, right? So now I no longer have to carry those heavy drink trays from the kitchen to the tables. Of course, there's avoiding the the mistakes, the trip and fall that can happen with those. But you think about things like carpal tunnel and repetitive motion injuries that come in those industries from moving those heavy trays. So if the robot's handling that for me, and if the robot's being used to take dirty dishes back to the kitchen, so I don't have to now take these, restaurants are doing more with less, right? Now, so you don't have the traditional bus boy as much anymore. A lot of times the wait staff is also having to clean the tables. So now if I don't have, if I, maybe I still have to clean the table, but I don't have to transport it back and forth to the kitchen. Well, now I'm able to spend more time. One, I don't have to do that heavy lifting, which is great. Less chance of injury, less chance to slip and fall, all kinds of things like that. But I'm able to spend more time with my customers, right? Making sure they're happy with the food, making sure they're getting their food, making sure their drinks stay full. So I end up with happier customers who tip better. And then I don't have to split tips with the robot either. So, so I think when most people get to really utilize a robot and interact with a robot, they understand they come to understand the value of having that robot assistant. It's not there to take their job. It's there to free up their time from doing the classic 3Ds that robots are great at: dirty, dull, and dangerous, right? It's there to take those tasks away from them so that they can concentrate on more valuable tasks. In this case, taking care of their customers. But
Yeah.
oftentimes you don't see that from the outside. You just see robots here to take my job. Robots going to take my job. But I think when most people get to actually interact with it does change their mind. So I think it's just going to take
Amazing.
time.
Love that. Well, look, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all of your insights, Dale. I really appreciate that. For our listeners, or any listeners that we have that might be aspiring to lead in strategy and innovation or follow a similar path that you have in your career, is there any advice that you would give them?
The network. I think that's the biggest
Yeah.
thing is network with people that have similar interests to what you want to pursue, whether that's online or in person. But networking, I think, is the key to success there.
Amazing. Well, thank you again so much for joining us. Where can our listeners find you and Roboworx and connect and keep an eye on what's going on in the future?
Absolutely. You can follow me on LinkedIn, Dale Walsh. You can also follow Roboworx on LinkedIn as well, and that's Robowrx, Roboworx. And you can find our website at roboworx.io.
Thanks again, Dale, and hopefully I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate the opportunity. Always enjoy talking about robots.
My pleasure.